Friends from all over the world, thanks again for joining us here on Planet Product Owner. This is Scott again, coming back to you from after a really long break. I'm really sorry that I had to break on you guys for as long as I did. I took a little break to tweak some things and just kind of get some things in perspective, and then here's coronavirus, right, and COVID. I know it seems like I've been taking this social distancing thing a little too far by not even having an episode in several weeks, but working on several different things right now, and I just haven't really been afforded the opportunity to get in here and record. The kids are home. All 4 girls are in this house, taking over my recliner, taking over my extra rooms. In any event, I just really haven't been able to get here, so it's been hard to slip away to the planet lately. All said, I really mean this. I hope that you are all safe from COVID, and this is really a serious time. Hearts, prayers, thoughts, all that stuff going out to all you guys, because I know this is a global impact, and I know that I have listeners all around the globe, so I'm really hoping the best for everybody here. Now that I'm back, I'd like to share with you that during my time away, to refactor this a little bit, I just kind of started looking back on what I'd done in the early days of the season, like in season 1, and started looking into some things and some ways that I could maybe improve the podcast and these episodes. And you're welcome to listen to some of the really early episodes and see some of the improvements in the dead space and some of the removal of the background music while I was talking. Maybe you'll enjoy that. I don't know. But today's topic is kind of centered around what I've been doing lately as it relates to this journey. So let's get started today, shall we? In many enterprise unified processes, like actually the enterprise unified process, for example, and if you don't know what that is, we're going to talk about it a little bit today. We find that there are a few phases that an idea passes through before it becomes a real boy, right? So the primary phases are inception, elaboration, construction, and transition. You've probably heard these things before. You may be practicing some of this in some of your models. You may have read about it somewhere in a SAFe manual or something like that. But today I'm going to just kind of give you a high-level description on what these 4 phases are and kind of what you expect out of it. Now, again, many of you are operating under the SAFe framework. I think it's great in many ways. I have an episode planned next that I've already written up and ready to record. So hopefully here very soon we'll be able to kick that one out about some of the pitfalls with SAFe and some of the things that we find. But today you'll hear a couple of references to that. You'll hear a couple of things outside of that too that aren't really related to the SAFe framework. But this enterprise unified process, or really all we're talking about is we're talking about defining some phases with some sort of definition of done before something leaves that column, if you think of it like that. I mean, that's kind of an easy way to describe it to product owners, because you guys are in lanes and columns and all that stuff all day anyway, and you should know what a definition of done is by now. So what we're saying is we're trying to get an idea, and I shared with you in a not so long ago episode that many times we're guilty of defining the what, then struggling to find some metric to identify a why that we can just support this what that we came up with, right? Instead of doing it the other way around, we've talked about that, because what we really need to be able to do is we really need to be able to define the why, and then from the metric, and then put the what on that so that it's in support of the why, because that's what's going to move the metric, right? So I'm not going to dive back into that today, but what I do want to talk about is how that kind of relates to these 4 phases that we've talked about and identified here already thus far. We get the idea, we iron out some wrinkles in inception, and then we kind of get that ready, or that work ready to be picked up, where we qualify it a little bit better, get our definitions around, and excuse me, but you'll plug in your favorite buzzword like MVP or MMP or slice or piece of cake or whatever, you want to call it. Then hoping that's ready to work after your elaboration phase, we start construction. And once that's finished, we transition that work, right? So the construction, you think of that as execution, and you think of transition as your go live, right? So combine this with the fact that Agile and Lean delivery models, particularly those with the heart of Scrum, these models incorporate a value system of inspect and adapt, with decentralized decision making in order to promote a valuable, usable product, right? Today, I think by just breaking this down to you a little bit more, this is going to be a really good episode context. So buckle up. Let's get to Planet Product Owner. As much as I would like to give you a sample and like replay some of those earlier episodes with that horrible audio in it, I really just don't think it's worth the time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the early days, okay? In relation to this podcast and kind of what I was trying to do here, I'm going to try to put this in a perspective for you because I think it's a very easy example because you guys have been on this journey with me, right? I mean, you've been listening, you've been subscribing, you've been telling your friends, you've been sending me emails. You've been connecting with me, and it's been great. I'm really enjoying the conversation, and I'm really enjoying all of this. I really am. So I'm again apologetic for not getting out an episode more quickly than I have lately. But let's talk about ideation first. I sat wondering about what I could do to use some of the coaching skills I have, some of the share some of the experiences that I've gained in this field for so many years. So I started brainstorming, and I was thinking about a way that I could do this. Now, this started with a hypothesis, right? I had a hypothesis. I thought that I could provide some information to an audience where the resources were really kind of thin, to be honest. I mean, you guys know this. You go out and you look for look for product owner podcasts. And essentially what you're doing is you're getting the same wash, rinse, and repeat stuff. I told you early on that I had listened to a lot of these podcasts, and it was just that. It was just the same old stuff that you could find in a book, and there wasn't much day-to-day stuff out there. Now, there's a couple of exceptions. There's some good ones out there. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean to discredit the whole community, but I wanted to do something a little bit different, That's the start of inception. I had something that I thought I could provide and would provide value, but I needed to figure out the best way to deliver it. Now, I wasn't sold on the podcast I did at first, right? What I'm describing to you really, though, is this kind of strategic theme, right? And I relate these strategic themes in SAFE to that of epics. So these are large strategic themes. I like to think of epics as strategic themes that essentially reside at the portfolio level. And I like to have all of that stuff in my portfolio, so that I can have something to look back on and kind of track my progress, right? So I thought during this inception, I thought, hey, I could do a podcast, I could do a YouTube channel, I could maybe even do some private consulting for your agile transformation, shameless plug, and maybe I could even go out on the speaker route and participate and share with large audiences, maybe give them some of the techniques and some workshops and stuff, give them more hands-on exercises because, we don't really get to do that in the podcast, and that's a shame, but, and possibly even develop my own content to publish, resell that content, maybe even write a book, I don't know. But that's the start of inception, right? You just want to figure out what it is, that you want to try to offer. What is it that sets you apart? What is it that you can do? And again, I'm describing that in the form of an epic, right? I wanted to get this valuable information out in front of an audience of community, so that we could improve and grow and learn from each other, right? I would love to have all of that stuff in my portfolio, like I said, because it seems like it could be profitable. I mean, that makes sense from any business perspective, but I really wasn't in this for the business side of it, I'll be honest. I was just in this to share because I like sharing. Sharing is fun. Sharing and caring. Anyway, but as much as I'd like to have all this other stuff, it seems like it's going to be kind of expensive, right? I mean, some of this stuff could get expensive. So I kind of figured that the rest of these options were first, that was the first thing. These could be expensive. The second, it'd be kind of risky, to put that money out there and then not have it pay off. And third, I probably not going to be able to get a metric provided to me that could prove that my hypothesis was true, prove that I could add some value to somebody else's journey, right? So I kind of figured that since since these other items in this fold weren't really kind of the best path for me, I landed on the podcast. So you kind of get where I'm going with this. So this is where we begin to build our features in SAFe. So it begins one feature for each of these epics. Basically, is kind of way I'm looking at it. I'm looking at these other items as epics, but you could definitely move them down to program level features, right? So you'd have your YouTube channel, your podcast, your curriculum, your speaking engagements, whatever. But I was leaving these kind of at the epic level in my mind. Does that make sense? All right, so I've got a loosely defined and high-level kind of way to measure them, and if I couldn't figure that out, if not, that's no big deal, because I needed to narrow my choices down, right? And so if I'm stumbling on already how to measure or how to define what it is and how I'm going to measure that feature, I'm probably not slicing that right already. Does that make sense? I hope I'm connecting some dots here for you as it relates to, these different levels of management and governance in these models. So narrowing down my choices, and I've said this before, I want you to think of the quickest, cheapest, cleanest, dirtiest path to provide the most value. That's what you're trying to do when you're developing these features, guys. All right. So I picked the one. I landed on the podcast. What a better way that you can think of that's cheap. Well, by the way, the tool I use is free, and it provides built-in metrics for me to use. So that's probably a good choice for me, right? That was my first best option to get the information out pretty quickly, test my hypothesis, and inspect and adapt, right? Because I could get instant feedback off of that. So that's really kind of what Inception is about. Now we jump to elaboration. I started looking into ways to provide the podcast. I started looking into ways to do it on a very small budget because, I'm kind of cheap, as evidenced by some comment that I'll make a little bit later on. But in any event, while you're on the elaboration phase, I want you to remember that you got to put a focus on the things that are the most cost effective. Many times we get out into promoting these features that we're developing with all these whiz-bang things and all the new business going on and the shiny stuff and all of that stuff. The fact is, if you don't remember anything else about elaboration and about designing these things and elaborating these things cheaply, I just want you to remember this. The only thing you're really trying to do is validate your hypothesis. Because you don't know. You just don't know. Right? You don't know what's going to... Cost matters, okay? Think of some of the features that you're elaborating right now. Some of the items that you're elaborating take you down rabbit holes you have no business being in. If you have to order more than 2 pizzas for a design session, you're probably not in line for a lean effort, my friend. Just saying, okay? So as you start thinking about the medium, the channel, the time commitment, the risk, what happens if it can't come true? What are your hopes and fears is what I'm driving to. Do you have a planned abandonment developed? Do you have planned abandonment built in? Are you willing to take the chance on spending someone else's money to achieve something that you're likely going to have to scrap? Think of it that way when you're talking about elaboration and you're talking about defining these features. Did you consider the fact that while you're spending countless dollars, that in the end you're only going to find out that 10% of your users are going to actually find value in this and promote it and give you better scores? So those are the kinds of things that you're wanting to make sure you're nailing down in elaboration. You want to get your plans together. You want to figure out the quickest path to success. Journey map it, story map it, make it lean, make it clean, right? Get it ready for production. You're going to have some external contributors at this level. You're going to have vendor agreements, licensing, purchases that are required, runway work. Like in my case, I needed a list of topics. That was really all I needed was a list of topics. And fortunately, I already had that. And this to you, by the way, is free. I have kept what I call the Scott's Little Black Book of Business Rules by my side for many, many years. I've stored it on a drive, external, now it's on the cloud. But in any event, that little book continues to grow. And basically, it's actually a list of things where a lot of my content comes from for this podcast, actually. Just when I had a thought or a lesson learned, I wrote it down. So that was your Free tip of the day brought to you by your man, Scott. So after preparing this about the best I could, it was time for construction. Right, this is execution. So I'm not going to break down to another segment because I just kind of touched on the elaboration phase, and I really won't spend too much time on construction phase either. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because construction phase, that's your thing, product owner. That's where you eat, sleep, breathe, live. That's where you dance. That's where you boogie. Execution, my friend, that execution of this, or the construction of this product or feature, that's the thing you do. All right. When you get a chance to look it over and figure out a cheaper, faster, leaner way to work while you're working on this, while you're constructing this, you're inspecting and adapting, and you're following the advice from the Scrum Guide, your team is self-organized, guess what you are? You're agile, okay? Forget about what anybody else says about it, all right? At the end of the day, learn to work better, that's agile, okay? All right, now, we're going to finish up with the transition phase, and this is where it's kind of showtime, right? This is go live. This is the time where the rubber hits the road, right? This is the moment we've all been waiting for. Of course, I didn't know what to expect, really, when I launched, nor do you. You don't really know what the users are going to do and how they're going to respond to what you're putting out there. I did what many refer to us as kind of a dark launch or a soft launch, whatever you want to call it. It was out there. Just didn't tell many people about it. I didn't go out guns a-blazing and horns and a big marketing campaign to tell everybody, hey, check this thing out, man. This is super awesome. And then I go back and listen to it. It's like, man, that audio really sucks. I'm so glad. And, think about it like a soft launch or a beta when you get ready to launch this thing out that you just did. You're testing it, right? You're testing your hypothesis. The reason that I like to launch it to a soft audience or to a friendly audience is because I can review some holes there that I may have overlooked. Right, I can get some immediate feedback there and say, hey, I trust your opinion. What do you think? You go out and check it out and you tell me, dude, you're smoking crack or whatever. Then I got time to fix those before I go out and spend all that money on my marketing plan. Then I'll let marketing or whoever it is that's running that thing turn it on when they want to. Okay, but give me a minute to fix it up. So I talked to a few of my friends in the business, some folks I respect, some people I've worked with in the past in various roles. And there's a handful of them who are still listening today, and I really appreciate that. They continue to give me feedback, by the way. I offered the link to them and had them give me some feedback. I found some issues with some of the devices. I found some issues with the links that I was providing. And, I found a few things here, a few bumps. And as I prioritized those and cleared up those issues, I felt pretty good about a general release, and that's when I started advertising it, what little bit I do advertise. And I don't advertise very much. You guys know this. A lot of it is word of mouth. A lot of it is you guys sharing it with other people, which is super cool, by the way. But I would say this, could you imagine if I published the first episode I created to a mass audience with the wrong link, with device issues, absolutely terrible audio and dead spots? Now, you heard my first episode, and that was kind of rough, but I got to tell you, it was 10 times better than the pilot episode for testing for Go Live, okay? I removed the major objections to adoption before I went to general release, and then I started socializing it. So I'm going to say that again. I removed the major objections to adoption before I went to general release and started socializing it. Now, that, my friends, was a pretty lean delivery of a feature that went from inception to transition. It was practically free, other than my time, and it did prove my hypothesis. You guys are listening. You guys are emailing me. I watch my numbers go up all the time. The analytics are amazing on this thing, and I'm really appreciative of it. And I really sincerely hope that you're getting value in it. I am not asking for money, I mean, I would love to put up like a little donate now button or something on a website, and I may do that a little bit later. We'll talk about that later. But anyway, now that this has been in the transition phase, I want to jump in the next segment and talk a little bit about something that I feel is really important. It's not really necessarily outlined in the model of this delivery model of these 4 phases that we talk about, but it's certainly important, and it's an important part of lean delivery or agile methodology anywhere you go. And what that is I'm in production. Now what? Hang tight for the next segment. So you have removed those major objections, right? And you've decided you're going to flip the switch. You're going to socialize this thing. You're going to get it out. You got your feature out there. You're collecting some feedback. You've been here, right? I mean, you've released something to production, and you have some method of collecting feedback, whether it's solicited or non-solicited. And we have another episode on that, by the way, if you want to go back and check it out. I can't cite it, so good luck with that. It's another thing I need to fix on this thing. In any event, you're collecting some feedback. Got some metrics, maybe, I hope. Kind of telling you and giving you some direction. I hope you're not overlooking that, for sure. Let me tell you what I see to give you some examples of this. I have had countless emails from listeners all over the world that back me up on the good stuff. Okay, that's great. I love that, by the way. I have also had some folks with some critique. Obviously not on the content, because y'all know that I own it. But for real, early on, here were the top things that I was tracking against. Feedback from my listeners. First, the background music while I was talking. A lot of people pointed out that was just a distraction. So during my time away from the episodes, I fixed the earlier episodes. Yay. So you guys can go back and check those out now without the distraction of the background music, and maybe that helps your experience. The other thing is, it was pointed out to me that the content was too deep for one episode. Well, that was something that I could kind of fix along the way, right? And I kind of did that. Now, this was feedback from the listeners that I could definitely take care of and resolve. Think of these as your defects or enhancements, whatever you want to call it. Now, let's look at a few others. This was feedback from myself. And of course, I am my own worst critic. And I want you to keep that in mind while I'm running through these real quick. Dead spots in the podcast. I admit early on I was shooting from the hip too much. That was something I could correct pretty easily. Because of the nature of this thing, I could clear those up while I was going. And while I was working on the first big piece of feedback, the background music, I fixed some of this too. So that was easy. Sound quality. This is funny. The first episode or two sounded like I was distant. Y'all remember me telling y'all about the microphone thing. Well, I said one day I was going to break down and buy a microphone, because I had a couple of folks tell me, a couple of buddies actually say, dude, you need to get a microphone. And I told you I was going to get one. Well, here's the secret. I never bought one. So the question for you today is, who is telling you it is a defect? Who is telling you it needs an enhancement? Notice the difference between these two sources of feedback. Apparently, the ratings, reviews, listeners, subscribers, I didn't really see a big impact. I didn't see a lot of people emailing me all the time saying, hey, dude, your audio sucks, or you need a microphone. I didn't get that. The things that I was most critical of were the things that I was most critical of. I criticized it. Think of that in terms of how you're dealing with some of your systems today. Now, I could have fixed these and spent a lot of time figuring that out. I could have broken down and bought a stupid microphone, but then I thought about it for a minute. Who's telling me about this? Well, 1 out of 20. Some of these were sent to me by users. I wanted to fix those, right? I want to focus on those because I've told you before, user adoption is definitely an item of value. I don't care what anybody tells you. User adoption is an item of value, okay? So I guess my point is, we have to sometimes challenge the opinions of stakeholders, internal resources, folks like that who are telling us all about this defect or this enhancement that we just got to have. Sometimes we got to challenge that because, quite frankly, you may spend money on something you don't really need to do. Now, let the users tell you about it, okay? I would say that, again, this is an 80% rule for me because you got to use common sense, too. Sometimes the users aren't going to tell you about something, but you already know, all right? Just be in the intersection there of common sense and faith, right? I mean, that's what I tell my kids anyway. Those are the ones you got to plan for. You have to inspect and adapt and find data to support your next steps in remediation. Like, where is the step that you're losing them? Why are they not signing up? Why are some areas of the thing used more than others? Sometimes it's the things that you don't get in solicited feedback that are most important, and those are the things that can make or break you. But oftentimes, like I said, plain common sense tells you what you need to fix and what you don't need to fix in most cases. Okay. So this was kind of a short episode back, and that's good. I hope you enjoyed it. You're not on a commute, so not right now anyway. I don't think anybody's on a commute, bless our hearts. So, hey, I'm so glad to be back. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope that I'm able to continue it very soon. Like I said, I got another couple of ones lined up already and ready to roll. Times are tough right now for all of us, and I pray the best for you all. Tell a friend about the podcast, subscribe, and as always, send me a note at scott@planetproductowner.org. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, have a safe, fun, lean journey, my friends.